the use of Medicaid dollars in schools could come under new scrutiny. Critics question whether schools are the best entities to provide all the services they now do, and if the educational system has become too reliant on the health program. Educators and advocates can counter that schools are the opportune place to address health-related issues, and that federal law requires them to provide such benefits. And they say if Medicaid doesn't pay, who will? With the Republican administration vowing to trim Medicaid, Kaiser Health News is examining how the U.S. has evolved into a Medicaid nation where huge swaths of Americans rely on the program directly and indirectly, often unknowingly. Medicaid's role in schools is a telling example. Medicaid spends only $4 billion of its $400 billion annual budget in schools, a very small portion of the pie, said Jessica Schubel, the senior policy analyst at the Bipartisan Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. But for the school districts providing an array of services that have quietly become vital to students and families, losing this funding source would be immense, she said, a big deal. The exact nature of the consequences would depend largely on the state and school districts as jurisdictions deploy Medicaid funds differently. Since states must contribute a portion of total Medicaid funding to the federal allocation, the amount of money available for school district spending is in part determined by state house policies. Generally, the federal program can help districts provide a variety of services, staff, and equipment for their students, although not all districts tap into the funding. Medicaid will reimburse districts for in-school vision and hearing exams, occupational therapy for special education students, even diabetes and asthma management. It covers wheelchairs and other medical devices, so a student can attend class. In Oakland Unified School District and others around the nation, Medicaid also supports some mental health services. In 2017, a survey by the School Superintendents Association found that 68% of superintendents said Medicaid dollars funded school nurses, counselors, and other health staff members. More than half of the superintendents said they have worked to expand the number of students enrolled in Medicaid, which can increase revenue to the school districts. The funds also enable districts to pay staff salaries, such as Roberts, buy medical equipment, and generally bolster their education budget, Schubel said. But some critics of Medicaid, notably political conservatives, question how funds flow into school districts and whether educators have wrongly plumbed the program to cover budget shortfalls. They argue that because the districts already receive other sources of federal funding for special education and health services in schools, they don't need federal Medicaid dollars to pay for them.
We're going to turn now to our local and legislative news in our respective papers at 10:23. A 21-year-old man returning to Omaha from Lincoln was killed when his vehicle struck the rear of a Nebraska State Patrol cruiser parked on the shoulder of Interstate 680 early Tuesday. Gary Johnson and Helen Thompson said their son, Avery Johnson, was the driver of the Kia Sportage that hit the cruiser. Trooper Christopher Goodrich suffered a fractured arm. Goodrich, assigned to Omaha-based Troop A, was parked on the shoulder and completing a report when the crash occurred at 1:42 a.m., according to Omaha police. A 17-year-old patrol veteran, Goodrich was in serious condition but doing well Tuesday afternoon at Creighton University Medical Center, Bergen-Mercy. Johnson was not wearing a seatbelt and suffered chest injuries, authorities said. He had visited a girlfriend in Lincoln and was driving home when the crash happened on northbound I-680 just south of Blondo Street. He died at Bergen-Mercy. Thompson said her son texted her a little after 1 a.m. to say he was on his way home. She said when he didn't arrive on time, she drove south on I-680 and came across the crash scene. Thompson and Johnson said their son was a fun-loving, caring young man. Johnson said his son, who would have marked his 22nd birthday next month, may have suffered a seizure before the crash. It was an accident, he said. Johnson described his son as, quote, just a kid who wasn't in any kind of trouble. Avery was happy-go-lucky, unquote. Avery didn't meet any strangers because everybody was his friend, his father said. He said his son enjoyed basketball. He did heating and air conditioning work and was employed at a kolache factory shop. Thompson said her son suffered a few seizures, possibly linked to high fevers as a young boy. She said he had drug problems earlier in his life and underwent treatment. He was very caring, sharing, and compassionate, she said. He always had a bright outlook in life. Even in treatment, he was thinking of others. In accordance with state law, an autopsy was scheduled. Goodrich and Johnson, the only occupants of both vehicles, were taken to the hospital by Omaha Fire Department medics. Johnson's 2008 SUV and Goodrich's patrol cruiser, a 2015 Dodge Charger, ended up in the grassy ditch on the east side of the roadway. 3 of the 4 lanes on northbound I-680 in the vicinity of the crash were closed while authorities investigated the accident. Those lanes remained reopened by 4 a.m. The crash remained under investigation Tuesday.
In the Nebraska legislature, Title X funding still in main budget bill. Senators debate long into the evening, then advanced bills. State senators went down to the wire on a motion to stop debate and vote on their mainline budget bill Tuesday night, squeaking out 33 votes for cloture, then advancing the bill 38-6. Many of those who voted against the motion to stop debate, or who were present but not voting, were protesting a provision that remained in the bill regarding Title X funding for medical clinics. They spent 6 hours late Tuesday afternoon and into the evening mostly debating whether the state's main budget bill, LB 944, should contain the provisions proposed by Governor Pete Ricketts that would mandate objective independence for health clinics that perform abortions and family planning and health services, with the provision any clinic that would have to show legal, physical, and financial separation from an abortion provider. To the next page here. An amendment by Lincoln Senator Kate Bowles attempted to change the Ricketts provision to mirror federal regulations, allowing organizations to provide neutral, factual information, non-directive counseling, or referral upon request. An otherwise qualified organization, the amendment said, would not be disqualified from Title X funds when it can demonstrate objective independence. It also provided that Title X funds be distributed statewide with the Department of Health and Human Services, ensuring a sufficient network be maintained to assure Title X services would be accessible without unreasonable delay. A number of supporters of the Ricketts provision argued it was merely meant to separate Title X funding from family planning from abortion services. A past audit showed some Title X funding was mixed with abortion funding, they said, and Ricketts provision was needed to ensure separation of service so as not to jeopardize the state's access to federal money. Senator Carol Blood of Bellevue, who supported the Bowles amendment, referred to Ricketts provision as Vaginagate, and saying it would punish people who need those family planning and cancer screening services. Deb?
Douglas County Corrections Director and Jail Officer Union President sounded alarms Tuesday about a pair of related problems plaguing the jail: too many inmates and too few officers. Correction officers have worked more than 6,000 hours of overtime, including 1,448 mandatory hours, since they packed a county board meeting room and asked for help on February 27th, said Dave Aldrich, president of Nebraska Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 8. He said the union had agreed with county management to cut back some staffing, but he said it is affecting jail safety and security. Replied Mike Boyle, chairman of the county board's Criminal Justice Committee, "We are absolutely on a slippery slope. We need to act." No actions were proposed at Tuesday's board meeting. Wages and benefits are under discussion in contract negotiations between the county and the union. Corrections Director Mark Foxall said the county is recruiting and running back-to-back training classes. At the end of February, the county was more than 40 officers short of its authorized strength of 374. Foxall told the board that the jail's population stayed around 1,300 during the winter months. It was 1,320 on Tuesday, close to the capacity of 1,452. Because of different requirements for different inmates, the jail is actually closer to capacity than that. 35 inmates slept on floors Monday night, Foxall said. The jail population typically rises in summer. What happens in July if we're at 1,300 already? Foxall said. Stay tuned. Foxall raised the specter of expanding the jail or building a new one, but he said he is working with other criminal justice agencies to find ways to reduce the jail population. Meanwhile, people keep arresting people and bringing them to the crowded jail, 75 of them Monday alone. If our numbers continue as they are, I'm running out of room, Foxall said. I can't turn away the burglar and the robber. I don't have the option of saying no. County board members vowed to help resolve the problem, but Chairman Chris Rogers made his position clear on more jail space. He said he opposes expanding the jail 1 inch. That would cost a lot of money, he said, worsen the staffing shortage, and lead to jailing more people who don't belong behind bars.
Investigators seek phone records in Cody case. Former Lincoln police officer was charged with sexual assault. Nebraska State Patrol investigators have gotten a judge's permission to send a former Lincoln police officer's cell phone to a forensic software company that has technology to bypass its locks so they can search for evidence. The request came in one of 4 search warrants filed this week in Lancaster County District Court and approved by District Judge Robert Otte. In it, Patrol investigator Neil Trantham said Gregory Cody's iPhone will be shipped to Celebrite for analysis because the state's patrol's lab doesn't have the hardware and software available to defeat the phone's ability to permanently disable itself. Cody, 55, resigned from the Lincoln Police Department on October 20th. On November 18th, he was arrested and later charged with first-degree sexual assault of a person mentally or physically incapable of resisting, involving a woman he met on a police call. In a 9-page affidavit, a State Patrol investigator said Cody's accuser, a 30-year-old Lincoln woman, described more than a year's worth of interactions with Cody, including about 50 incidents of sexual encounters that she described as forced, most of which occurred while he was on duty. She said she felt coerced because Cody didn't take her and he still could, which would jeopardize her ability to keep her kids. Trentham said phone records have shown more than 80 phone calls and 30 texts between Cody's cell phone and the woman's number between March and October of last year. But, he said, investigators also want to look at direct messages because Cody's accuser said he once helped her get out of a speeding ticket by intervening with another officer, and as payment, she sent him nude images of herself over Facebook Messenger. She said Cody also sent her pictures of his genitalia. At the advice of his attorney, Cody did not consent to a search of his phone. In another of the search warrants, Trentham sought copies of Lincoln Police internal affairs files, as well as timesheets for June, July, and October, and records for the mobile data terminal computer assigned to his police vehicle. Bev?
From Lincoln, more details of Governor Pete Ricketts' latest tax proposal emerged Tuesday at a legislative committee meeting. But State Senator Jim Smith of Papillion, the Revenue Committee chairman, said he will not seek a vote on the proposal until committee members have had a chance to see and digest the actual legislation. That could happen today. The proposal will be presented as an amendment to Legislative Bill 947, which Smith had introduced on the governor's behalf. Both the original version of LB 947 and the new plan would provide Nebraska homeowners and agricultural landowners with a new refundable income tax credits to offset part of their property tax bills. Unlike the original, the new plan would leave the state's $224 million property tax credit program and $20 million worth of personal property tax exemptions untouched. LB 947, as introduced, would have eliminated those programs to help pay for the new income tax credits. The new plan has no offsetting cuts. Obviously, this is going to have to be paid for out of revenue growth and controlling spending, Smith said. He acknowledged that the first year, however, would be paid for by taking money from the state's cash reserve fund. He estimated that it would take about $40 million to cover the income tax credits for the first year, plus $20 million for LB 947's workforce development pieces. He said the new proposal responds to critics of LB 947, including commercial property owners who would have lost their property tax credits under that plan. Under the new plan, ag land owners would start with income tax credits equal to 2% of their net property tax bills, meaning their bills after the existing credits had been subtracted. The income tax credits would increase 2% each year until reaching 20% in 2027. Homeowners would get income tax credits equal to 1% of their net property tax bills, up to a cap of $25. The income tax credits would increase by 1% each year for 8 years, then by 2% a year until reaching 20%, or a cap of $500 by 2030. Smith estimated that the new income tax credits would add up to about $600 million to $700 million by 2030. As with the original LB 947, the new plan would cut the top corporate income tax rate, but the cut would be smaller and the individual income tax rates would be left as is. The new plan would drop the corporate tax rate to 6.84%, the same as the top individual rate. As introduced, LB 947 would have cut both to 6.69%. We're looking at this as a jobs bill, Smith said. I think it's the right thing to do for Nebraska taxpayers.
Tax incentive funding will help with Marcus expansion. A large culvert that once carried Antelope Creek below O Street is creating headaches for a local business. The 15-foot wide culvert was discovered when owners of Viet Hao, an Asian market, decided to expand their business and bought property at 2365 and 2373 O Street, across the street from the existing market. The abandoned tunnel under part of the new property needs to be filled in so owners Hung and Ning and Thu Nguyen can rebuild on the property. That cost made the project too expensive, so the Nguyen's came to the city for help. Urban Development Department Director David Landis said during a public hearing on the project, the solution is tax increment financing. The owners will use TIF for the excavation work, Landis said. The culvert was part of the original Antelope Creek channel and was abandoned in the early 1900s with the construction of the long box culvert near Elliott Elementary School. Culvert near Elliott later became part of the Antelope Creek Valley project. Years ago, the city filled up this unneeded tunnel, which runs under O Street, but stopped at the private property line, Landis said. The $128,000 TIF project is unusual in several respects. It is among the city's smallest TIF projects. The family members who own the building did not use a lawyer for the redevelopment agreement with the city, Landis said. Beth?
From Lincoln, the federal fraud trial for Aubrey Trail, a person of interest in the death of Lincoln woman Sidney Loof, has been delayed. U.S. Magistrate Judge Cheryl Swart on Tuesday pushed the trial to May 14th to give attorneys more time. It had been scheduled for March 26th. Federal indictments allege Trail, 51, and his 23-year-old girlfriend, Bailey Boswell, scammed a Kansas couple out of $400,000 in a joint scheme to purchase a rare gold coin. Trail and Boswell remain persons of interest in the death of the 24-year-old Loof, who disappeared November 16th after arranging a date with Boswell online. Trail has claimed responsibility for Loof's death, but has maintained that it was accidental.
Well, it's nearly 10:40, and we will begin reading the obituaries, this time from the Lincoln Journal-Star. Shearman, Randall Bruce Shearman, age 62, of Waverly, died March 10th. The funeral services will be 1 p.m. Thursday, March 15th at the Lincoln Berean Church, with interment at Rose Hill Cemetery in Waverly. Memorials may be given to the family for future designation. Roper & Sons Funeral Home is handling the services. Albee, Susan J. Sue Albee, age 53, of Lincoln, died March 9th. Services at 11 a.m. Monday, March 19th at Sheridan Lutheran Church, 70th and Old Cheney. Memorials to the family to be decided at a later date. Arrangements by Butheris, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home. Truba. Emil Curly Truba, age 90 years, of Lincoln, died March 12th. He served in the Army during the Korean War. A massive Christian burial will be held at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, March 16th at St. John the Apostle Catholic Church, 76th and Vine Street in Lincoln. In lieu of flowers, the family suggests memorials to St. John the Apostle Catholic Church. Arrangements by Butheris, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home. Watsek, Albert W. Watsek, age 94, of Lincoln, passed away Wednesday, March 7th. Memorial services will be held at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday, March 17th at First Christian Church, 430 South 16th Street in Lincoln. Memorials may be given to the Humboldt Christian Church, First Christian Church in Lincoln, or the Czech Language Foundation at UNL. Wary Mortuary of Humboldt is in charge of arrangements. Pollock. Robert Bob S. Pollock, age 92, died in Lincoln on March 11th, was a Navy veteran of World War II. Memorial services will be held at 2 p.m. Saturday, March 17th at Christ Lutheran Church at 43rd and Sumner in Lincoln. Arrangements with Butheris, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home. Memorial contributions may be made in care of the family. Thomas J. Pelton Destroyer Museum Grant Program, U.S. Bancroft, DD 598 in memory of Robert Pollock, or the American Diabetic Association. Rosecrans. Judith Frances Rosecrans, age 55, of Lincoln, died March 3rd. Memorial service at 10 a.m. Tuesday, March 20th at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home, 6800 South 14th Street. Private interment at a later date. Memorials in care of the family at the Lincoln Funeral Home. Backstrom. Marie Elizabeth Backstrom, age 96, of Lincoln, died March 10th. Funeral service 11 a.m. Friday, the 16th at First Lutheran Church, 1551 South 70th. Prior interment will be at 9:30 a.m. at Lincoln Memorial Park. Please meet at gate number 2. Memorials may be given to First Lutheran Church in Lincoln. Roper & Sons is handling the services. Klein. John Klein, age 81, of Lincoln, died March 10th. Memorial service at 10 a.m. Friday, March 16th, the Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home on South 14th Street in Lincoln. Mullins. Mary Alice Vanderford Mullins, age 97, died on March 10th. A celebration of life will be held at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, March 16th at the First Presbyterian Church of Beatrice. In lieu of flowers, a memorial has been established to the Lincoln Cemetery, as Care Hospice of Beatrice, or to the family for future designation. Fox Funeral Home of Beatrice is in charge of arrangements. Martin. Patricia Martin died February 26th. A massive Christian burial at 10 a.m. March 17th at the North American Martyrs Catholic Church in Lincoln. The celebration of life is planned for Saturday, March 17th, 4 p.m. at the Nebraska Champions Club. Lightbody. James E. Lightbody, age 86, died March 10th in Lincoln. Services are pending with Roper & Sons Funeral Home. Tim. Viola May Tim, age 92, of Tempe, Arizona, died March 7th. No further information is available. Ludi. Stephen A. Ludi, age 69, of Wahoo, died March 11th. Funeral at 1 p.m. Saturday at the First Presbyterian Church. Visitation 6 to 8 p.m. Friday. Memorials to the family. Bruce Nabity Funeral Home is in charge of the arrangements. Fisher. Alice Fisher, age 80, of Lincoln, died March 13th in Lincoln. Memorial service to be held at 10 a.m. on Friday, March 16th at Roper & Sons Funeral Home, the South Lincoln Chapel on Hohensee Drive. Memorials to Tabitha Hospice in Lincoln, or the PEO Cotty College in Nevada, Missouri. Bergman. Reginald Bergman passed away on March 12th. Memorial service at 10 a.m. Saturday, March 17th at the Lincoln Burying Church, South 70th Street in Lincoln. Memorials to the Capital Humane Society in Lincoln, or the Monarch Hospice, also in Lincoln. Celebration of Life for Nancy Lancaster, 84, will be from 3 to 7 p.m. on March 24th at the Isles Reception Hall. Teeter, Kenneth E. Teeter, age 58, of Lincoln, died on March 8th. Graveside service at 3 p.m. Friday at Calvary Catholic Cemetery. Memorials to the family, arrangements by Bootheris, Macer, and Love Funeral Home. Setcher, Elaine A. Setcher of David City, died March 10th. Memorial Mass Wednesday, 10 a.m. at St. Mary's Church in David City. The parish rosary will be held Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. at the church. No viewing, there was a cremation. Arrangements by Chermock Funeral Home in David City. Swenson, Judy Jean Swenson, age 77, of Lincoln, died February 12th. Celebration of Life, 3 to 6 p.m. on March 17th at the Speedway Motors Museum of American Speed in Lincoln, Nebraska. McKendry, Lorraine McKendry, age 98, of Lincoln, passed away March 9th. The celebration of life will be held 10:30 Friday, March 16th at Roper and Sons Funeral Home on O Street in Lincoln. Memorials will be held. Memorials may be given to the American Lutheran Church in Lincoln. Eisenhower, Delton L. Eisenhower, age 90, of Lincoln, formerly of Syracuse, died March 8th. Memorial services will be held Friday, March 16th at 11 a.m. at the Memorial Lutheran Church in Syracuse. Memorials to the Nebraska Disabled American Veterans. Arrangements by Fusselman Allen Harvey Funeral Home of Syracuse. Weber, Danny K. Weber, age 71, of Beatrice, passed away March 3rd. Services Monday, March 19th at 2 p.m. at Gertis Meyer Chapel in Fairbury. Memorials to the family's choice. Engdahl, Jeffrey M. Engdahl, age 46, died March 11th, 2018. Celebration of Life, 11 a.m. Friday, March 16th at the Rejoice Lutheran Church in Omaha. There will be no funeral home was listed. Campbell, Helen Kuchera Campbell, age 92, of Lincoln, died March 8th. Memorial service will be held Friday, March 16th at 11 a.m. at the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Wildbriar Lane in Lincoln. Aspen Aftercare in charge of the arrangements. And finally, Wright, Frances Louise Frankie Wright, age 87, passed away March 11th in Lincoln, Nebraska. Funeral service 11 a.m. Wednesday, March 14th at the East Lincoln Christian Church in Lincoln. Memorials to the East Lincoln Christian Church or Ascara Care Hospice of Lincoln. Metcalf Funeral Home is handling the services. Beverly?
And these are the obituaries and funeral arrangements in today's Omaha World Herald. Atkins, John T. Atkins, he was 92, passed away at his home in Carthage, Illinois. For more information, contact Printy Funeral Home in Carthage, Illinois. Albers, Gerald T. Albers, he was 88. Services Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. at St. James Catholic Church, internment Calvary Cemetery. Memorials to St. James Seton School or Hospice House. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries is in charge. Bison, Zaria G. Bison, she was 100. Funeral service Friday, March 16th, 2018 at 11 a.m. At Bethel Christian Ministries. Memorials have been directed to the family. Bethany Funeral Home is in charge. Carranza, Jared P. Carranza, he was 40. Funeral at 10:30 a.m. Friday at Stonebridge Christian Church. Memorials to Camp Sunshine in Roca, Nebraska. Reichmuth Funeral Home is in charge. Crowdy, Jack A. Crowdy, 89. Private family services will be held. Memorials are suggested to Sienna Francis House. E.P. Hoffman Warwick Cutler, West Center Chapel is handling this. Krause, Michael E. Krause, he was a veteran of the Marines. He was 70. Funeral 11 a.m. Friday, March 16th at the Forest Lawn Funeral Home in Omaha. Memorials to family at a later designation. DeGray, Anne A. DeGray, she was 83. Services Saturday, March 17th at 10 a.m. at St. Luke United Methodist Church. Memorials to St. Luke Teen Center. E.P. Hoffman Dwart Cutler Chapel is in charge. Dryling, Janet V. Dryling, 61 of Fort Calhoun. No memorial service, private interment. Memorials suggested to the Janet Dryling family. Seaver Sprick Funeral Home in Fort Calhoun is in charge. Ingdahl, Jeffrey M. Ingdahl, 46. Celebration of Life, 11 a.m. Friday, March 16th at Rejoice Lutheran Church in Omaha. Memorials may be made in Jeff's name to North Platte Public Schools Foundation, Golf Scholarship in North Platte, or Rejoice Lutheran Church in Omaha. Raymond Mortuary is handling this. Frazier, Bonnie Frazier, 76. Funeral service Thursday, March 15th at 10:30 a.m. at West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home. Memorials can be made to the American Stroke Foundation, Hillcrest Hospice, or the Florence Home. West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home is in charge. Gonzaga, Anita F. Gonzaga. She was 80. A complete notice will come later. Johnny Gentleman Mortuaries is handling this. Hrabick, H-R-A-B-I-K, Kenneth B. Hrabick, 90. He was a veteran. Memorial service Friday, March 16th at 10 a.m. at West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home. They are in charge of this whole service. J. Maurice L. J. He was 77. Memorial service Thursday, March 15th at 10:30 a.m. at Raymond Mortuary. Raymond Mortuary, 72nd Chapel is in charge. Johannick, Eileen T. Johannick, 87. Funeral Thursday, 10 a.m. at Holy Ghost Church. Memorials to the family. He Hoffman Dwart Cutler Chapel is in charge. Keithley, Catherine Kitty Keithley. She was 90. Funeral Mass at 11 a.m. Saturday, March 17th at St. Wenceslaus Catholic Church. Arbor Cremation Society is in charge. Lawson, Jessica Lawson. She was 88 from Columbus, Nebraska, formerly of Genoa. Funeral service Saturday, March 17th at 10 a.m. at the Grace Baptist Church in Genoa. Raymakers Patrick Funeral Home in Genoa is in charge. Lowren, Nora Wimhoff Lowren, 85. Services Friday, 10 a.m. at the Christ the King Church. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries is in charge of this. Ludi, Stephen A. Ludi, he was 69 of Wahoo. Funeral 1 p.m. Saturday, First Presbyterian Church in Wahoo. Memorials to the family. Press Navity Funeral Home is handling this. Malolepsy, I'm going to spell that Malolepszy. Lynn M. Malolepsy, 66. There's no information about a service time, but Good Shepherd Funeral Home is in charge of this service. Marquez, Richard Marquez, 76. A complete notice will follow later. Heath Hoffman Dwart Cutler Chapel is in charge. Martinez, Manuela R. Martinez. Funeral Thursday, 11 a.m. at the Carisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home. McFarland, John E.F. McFarland, 62. There's no other information about McFarland. Milford, Roberta S. Milford, 73. A private memorial mass will be 11 a.m. Friday, March 16th at Mariana in Cedar Bluffs. Memorials to the Sienna Francis House in Omaha. Moser Memorial Chapel in Fremont is in charge. Miller, Douglas E. Miller Sr. He was a veteran. Mass of Christian Burial, Friday, March 16th at noon at Saints Peter and Paul Catholic Church. Memorials will be directed by the family. Military honors by American Legion Post 331. Bellevue Memorial Chapel is in charge of arrangements. Morgan, Holly L. Morgan, 55. Funeral service Friday, 10 a.m. at Roeder Mortuary, which is also in charge. Ondrechek, Joseph C. Joe Ondrechek, 79 of Fremont. Funeral Friday, 10:30 a.m. at Pohoco Lutheran Church, south of Fremont. Memorials to Pohoco Lutheran Church or Pohoco Cemetery. Ludvigsen Mortuary in Fremont is in charge. Prall, P-R-A-L-L, Pearl Prall, she was 90. She passed away March 10th in Plano, Texas. There is no other information. Reitchen, Richard P. Reitchen, he was 70. A complete notice will come later. Heaphy Hoffman Dwart Cutler is in charge of this service. Ricks, Eric Melvin Ricks, he was 64. Visitation Friday, March 16th from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. at St. Vincent's de Paul Catholic Church, followed by massive Christian burial at 10:30 a.m. Memorials are suggested to the American Heart Association or St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. Heaphy Hoffman Dwart Cutler Chapel is in charge. Rollerson, Flora Rollerson, she was 98. Funeral service 12 p.m. Friday at Salem Baptist Church. Thomas Funeral Home is handling this. Schaefer, John W. Schaefer, 86. He was a veteran. Funeral service Thursday, March 15th at 10 a.m. Southridge Church in Papillion. Memorials may be directed to Southridge Church. Brian P. Harvey Funeral Home in Plattsmouth is handling this. Sogard, Marjorie Catherine Vesely Sogard. She was 75. Memorial Mass, Saturday, March 17th at 10:30 a.m. at Our Lady of Peace, Capehart Chapel in Capehart Road, Bellevue. Memorials are suggested to the American Cancer Society. Johnny Gentleman Mortuary is handling this. Sparks, Elizabeth Ann Sparks, 84. There isn't any information about a service time, but Kramer Funeral Home is in charge of this. Stone, Donald J. Stone, he was 84 and a veteran, Ozark, Missouri. Funeral services 10:30 Saturday, March 17th at St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Church in Ozark. In lieu of flowers, memorial contributions may be made to the University of Nebraska Foundation to the Don and Bernice Stone Scholarship Fund for Rural Nebraska Youth. Gorman Scharf Funeral Home in Springfield, Missouri is in charge of this service. Tim, Viola M. Tim, 94. Services Thursday, 10:30 a.m. Roby Funeral Home Chapel. Roby Funeral Home in Plattsmouth is in charge of this service. Tinsley, Thomas H. Tinsley, he was 79. A complete notice will come later. White, Ronald J. White, no age was given. Memorial services Saturday, March 17th, 2 p.m. at Boys Town, Nebraska. Wood, John P. Wood, he was 27. The family will receive friends on Wednesday, March 14th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the West Center Chapel. Memorials will be directed by the family. Heaphy Hoffman Dwart Cutler West Center Chapel is in charge. And finally, Young, Errol Dean Young, he was 71, of Tekamah. Memorial services with military honors Saturday, March 17th, 2 p.m. at the Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Tekamah. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the family for a later designation. Pellin Funeral Services in Tekamah is in charge of this service. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter.
I can believe you are tuned into the Radio Talking Book Network in Omaha, Nebraska. We've been proudly serving our blind and visually impaired listeners for over 43 years.
Oh,
Radio
yeah.
Talking Book is a
Left you some water over there.
KIOS-FM in
I didn't
Omaha,
know if that was
statewide
me.
the facilities of
Somebody-
Oh, I always
radio
got water.
and television. Thank you for being loyal Radio Talking Book listeners and supporters. And
Yeah,
now,
I guess so, yeah, after a
listen to your
while.
lunch breaks. You're
Especially after reading out.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah, you
It's
just
Wednesday,
tightens
March
up.
14th. Your Meals on Wheels menu for today is
And
turkey
then my
roast
son, how
and
my son
gravy,
does it, he
with
does a lot of
potatoes,
acting and singing and
country
stuff like that.
vegetables, Vienna
Some of
bread
those shows are a
sliced with
couple hours
margarine,
long. and he's
plain cake, and
singing
1%
at the
milk.
top of his voice.
He's
You've
probably
seen
in
your
good
lunch
shape.
menu
Yeah, I'm
brought
sure
to
Well,
you
he's
yeah,
every
yeah,
Monday,
yeah.
day,
Monday through
Friday,
Friday.
right here on Radio Talking Book.
Uh,
Now, before we
Just-
return to our readers, let's
He's,
listen to
you
this
know,
public
they
service
keep
announcement.
everything in
Yeah.
good shape.
Radio Talking Book Service
Okay.
presents our third annual Whining in the Dark.
I think that
Test your
Yeah,
taste
did you
buds
see the
with a
signs out there?
blindfolded
Yeah.
wine tasting and
Well, I
delight
got like
in delectable
WHIN.
delicacies created for your pleasure by the chef at Nosh Wine Lounge. The event, Whining in the Dark, will be Sunday, March 18th from 4 to 6 p.m. at Nosh Restaurant and Wine Lounge
Yeah.
at 1006 Dodge Street in Omaha. Musical entertainment will be provided by Bob
Look at this
Dyer
cartoon.
and David P. Murphy. Bob is a board member at Radio Talking Book, and he also reads to our listeners every
I never did
Friday,
figure out why that guy took
doing
that
live
job.
readings
Or why a lot
of the
those
Omaha World
early
Herald
stuff
and the
was
Lincoln
that.
Journal Star. Seating is
Big time
limited for Whining
business
in the
and
Dark.
everything else. Now
Please
they're-
RSVP
Now they're
by March
They'll
12th
always be
at
associated with that. Well, he said he was going to retire from public
or call
life.
the office at
And private
402
It's business life. Every
572
Probably.
The cost for a
How
ticket
old
to
he is,
Whining
I
in the
don't think
Dark
he's
is
that old.
$60 a
Wow.
person. That
But,
includes
people like
tax
that,
gratuity
they
and a
thrive
$30
on
donation to
on power.
RTBS.
Yeah.
So please join
Doesn't
us
matter
for
how much
Whining
money
in
they
the
make,
Dark
it's their
Sunday,
power,
March
it's everything.
18th
And
from
what
4
a
to
guy like
6.
that will do now, it's like, it'll
And
drive
now
me
let's
crazy.
return to the second hour
Do you wanna
of
go
the
first?
live reading of the Omaha World
Sure.
Herald and Lincoln
Yeah,
Journal
you've been
Star.
reading.
Here are your readers, Beverly Laddick and Rick Meyer.
Of the Lincoln Journal Star. Free trade, not tariffs, a boon for Nebraska, U.S. As federal trade policies toward a somewhat uncertain endgame, one thing remains crystal clear. Today's smart trade pacts have unquestionably benefited this state and country. The 5 Republicans who make up our state's congressional delegation understand this, with Senators Ben Sass and Representative Adrian Smith strongly condemning the implementation of tariffs, most recently on imported steel and aluminum, and the negative impact those will have on businesses and consumers alike. Many columnists on this page have correctly noted that tariffs represent a tax on American consumers, with the duty applied at the border ultimately paid by the end user. They're just bad business who compound the flat-out wrong rhetoric President Donald Trump used last week when saying trade wars are fun and easy to win. That's a dangerous game to play, one that costs far too great to trifle with. The history books are littered with cautionary tales of protectionism gone wrong, with disastrous tariffs instituted around the Great Depression to the short-sighted withdrawal from trade pacts that cost Nebraska beef producers both access and sales to Asian markets at a time of already low commodity prices. The White House seems to focus its attention on trade deficits and imperfect means of measuring these deals' benefits as a win or loss metric, even though the truth is much more nuanced than using that as the only yardstick. Nebraska still comes out way ahead, turning a $2.8 billion trade surplus in 2016. A prime example of how free trade maximizes efficiencies and improves all participants' lots comes from readily apparent source in Nebraska, agriculture. Compared to the U.S., Canada has relatively few manufacturers that produce major farm implements and machinery. Meanwhile, our northern neighbor specializes in the production of young livestock. There's a delegation that included Canada's deputy ambassador, to the U.S., and its Minneapolis-based consulate general pointed out when meeting with the editorial board. It's no coincidence that these two fields represent Nebraska's single greatest export, $218 million, and greatest import from $105 million, Canada, in 2016, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Nationally, it's a $47.2 billion relationship that supports 9 million jobs stateside, including $2.4 billion and 57,400 jobs in Nebraska. And Canada was merely Nebraska's second largest trading partner from 2016. As Mexico, the third partner in the North American Free Trade Agreement and a major consumer of Nebraska agricultural goods, held the top spot that year. Protectionism, tariffs, and other anti-free market steps threaten the widespread benefits of such agreements, needlessly jeopardizing jobs and industries. Nebraska and the U.S. as a whole benefit from free trade agreements. Bev?
Here are some letters to the public polls from readers of the Omaha World Herald. The first one comes from Brian Gongle of West Des Moines. I am told we don't use an S at the end of the saving in daylight saving time because savings would make it sound like a bank. Frankly, I wouldn't mind changing the name if it meant I could have my hour back with some form of accrued interest. From Janice Mose in Omaha, we were part of the pilot program for the proposed new trash pickup system. The large 96-gallon cans were a disaster. First, most homes in our area have small garages, so the cans lived outside. Neighbors laughed about the new accessory in their driveway. The other problem is they are very cumbersome, and with a sloped driveway, they are especially dangerous in the winter. Why is it that Bellevue has the sense to let its residents pick a container size up front? But this mayor says we have to keep the 96-gallon carts for 3 months before asking for smaller ones. Most people who are part of the pilot program know what fits their needs. Also, this neighborhood has tons of trees, so there are always numerous bags of leaves out for pickup. It's not right for this to be the same policy for the whole city when homes and yards vary so much. Bellevue and Council Bluffs have no limit for yard waste. It looks like in Nebraska, Bellevue is leading the way in trash pickup. From Alex Worth of Omaha comes this letter. I am thankful that Nebraska election officials take digital security seriously, but I'm still troubled by the silence from the legislature on this issue. We can all agree that one of the basic functions of government is to provide for the security of our society. That security starts with elections. News about Russian interference in the American election system is concerning because it shows we are not doing everything we can to prevent private voter information and the sanctity of honest voters. It's time our state legislators do what they were elected to accomplish and keep our democracy secure. Here's a letter from Kenneth J. Leischner of Columbus, Nebraska. Apparently, Stan Fulner and Dick Jugel don't appreciate the value of tenure in higher education. Without tenure, the University of Nebraska would not be the highly rated research institution it is. That research capability brings to the university millions of dollars in private and public grants that allow it to improve crops, medical treatments, sport and athletic fitness regimens, psychological and physiological studies, and myriad other benefits to Nebraskans and others. To presume that professors spend their time lecturing only is to overlook the wealth of experience they have in their chosen fields that they can apply by overseeing graduate and undergraduate courses to further that research and development. Tenure also ensures that the university will keep these valuable contributors to the state's economy. It would be difficult, if not impossible, to recruit and retain exceptional personnel if there were no assurance of continued commitment to their efforts on behalf of the university and its future. Here is a letter from David Williams of Omaha. Lou Tutilas suggested in his March 12th public pulse letter, contrary to all facts, that President Donald Trump's recently proposed trade tariffs were necessary to prevent China from having the ability to, quote, cripple our defense industries, unquote. But China barely cracks the top 10 on the list of steel exporting countries to the United States. The measly 2.9% of our steel that comes from China is hardly enough to cripple anything. So if Chinese steel imports drop to zero, difference could easily be made up by much friendlier trade partners such as Canada, which tops the list of America's steel suppliers. Trump's trade tirade is nothing more than another desperate attempt to deflect from the Russian investigation that threatens to destroy him and his administration. Here's a letter from Cecil Parker of Holdridge, Nebraska. I do not believe that anyone should be surprised that our elected officials cannot do their jobs. They are very busy investigating the investigation of the investigation of the investigation of the investigation. There is no way they have time to deal with the budget, the national debt, and other unimportant duties. I propose creating an elected body with one individual from each state, and they shall have no duty other than to investigate. Results, positive or negative, would not be required. Just keep on investigating. It would be unseemly to actually bring charges against anyone and would spoil the whole layout. With this in mind, our, quote, leaders, unquote, can go back to failing to solve any problem. And of course, they will claim victory as the result of ... Finally, from Don and June Biernick of Ralston. We want to express a big thank you to the very kind police officer who helped an elderly couple February 28th when our car stalled near 120th and I Streets. There was a lot of traffic, and he managed to push our car onto the shoulder where we could park safely and call for assistance. What a relief. We also want to thank all the police officers who work daily to keep us safe.
And a column by Jody Radke, higher tobacco taxes improve health. Nebraska lawmakers have an exceptional opportunity to improve the state's health and economy by supporting legislation that will increase the state cigarette tax by $1.50 per pack. This critical action will prevent kids from smoking, prompt smokers to quit, save lives, and reduce state health care costs by hundreds of millions of dollars. In these partisan times, it's refreshing to have an option legislators of all political persuasions can support. The need for this initiative is clear. Tobacco is the #1 preventable cause of death in Nebraska, killing 2,500 residents each year and sickening many more. The vast majority of these smokers started as kids. Despite progress in reducing smoking, 17% of adults and 13.3% of high school students in Nebraska still smoke, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. About 900 Nebraska kids become daily smokers each year, and more than 38,000 kids alive today in the state will die prematurely from smoking without strong action to prevent it. Of additional concern, a 2016 study indicates about 27% of cancer deaths in Nebraska are attributable to smoking. The nation's top public health authorities, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Surgeon General, agree that increasing tobacco taxes is one of the most effective ways to reduce smoking. Even tobacco companies admitted in their own internal documents. The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids estimates a $1.50 hike will prevent 10,000 Nebraska kids from becoming smokers, encourage 11,700 smokers to quit, and save 6,100 people from premature smoking-related death. Nebraska's current cigarette tax of just 64 cents per pack ranks in the bottom third of states. It hasn't been raised since 2002. Since then, 47 states and the District of Columbia have increased their cigarette tax at least once. It's now Nebraska's time when the vast majority of the state's voters agree. A 2017 poll showed 71% support increasing the tobacco tax by $1.50. Nebraska spends more than $795 million a year on healthcare costs directly caused by smoking, including $162 million from Medicaid per the CDC. A $1.50 cigarette tax increase will save more than $450 million in long-term health care. costs and bring in more than $75 million in new revenue in the first year alone. While Nebraska can further reduce smoking by devoting some of the revenue to prevention and cessation programs, a $1.50 cigarette tax increase in itself will have a huge impact in reducing smoking, especially among kids. Regardless of where the revenue goes, the benefits of a substantial tobacco tax increase are too important and shouldn't be missed. With all these benefits a tobacco tax increase will bring, who could possibly be opposed? Not surprisingly, tobacco companies, because they know the results will be fewer customers for their deadly and addictive products. They need a pipeline of kids for their industry to survive. The legislature should approve a $1.50 increase in the cigarette tax for the same reason Big Tobacco opposes it, because it will prevent kids from smoking and encourage smokers to quit. That may be a bad outcome for the tobacco industry, but it's great for Nebraska's health and budget. Beth?
Here's an editorial from the staff of the Omaha World Herald. A proposal before the Nebraska legislature, LB 389, has a worthy goal, encouraging wireless technology in rural communities. Unfortunately, LB 389, as currently written, would create major problems for urban areas. It's unbalanced legislation that would erode municipalities' legitimate authority. Heated debate is expected on this highly technical bill. If lawmakers can't correct the legislation's multiple flaws through amendments, LB 389 should be voted down. The bill's commendable aim is to help rural communities gain access to next-generation 5G wireless technology via equipment known as small cells. That technology, consisting of antennas, radio equipment, and support devices, attaches to existing structures such as utility poles or streetlights. Small cells are a new alternative to traditional cell towers. The bill's sponsor is State Senator Kurt Friesen of Henderson, chairman of the Transportation and Telecommunications Committee, which approved LB 389 on a 5-3 vote, with 3 urban senators voting no. State Senator John Lowe of Kearney designated it as his priority bill. Representatives for the city governments of Omaha, Lincoln, and Papillion testified against the bill, as did the Nebraska League of Municipalities, the Nebraska Association of Counties, and industry associations for electrical utilities, telecommunication providers, and cable providers. Carla Rupiper, Papillion city attorney, testified against the bill on behalf of her city and the Nebraska League of Municipalities. The legislation, as originally proposed, she said, in our view, is a very broad brush and a very one-size-fits-all approach that we believe is very one-sided to the benefit of the wireless cell industry. It would significantly interfere with our local zoning regulations and ordinances and the controls that are in place for the logical and safe regulation of tower siting and co-location of tower equipment, she said. LB 389, she said, would also significantly interfere with our existing right-of-way agreements with other utility carriers for the use of the city's right-of-way. We have a number of those agreements in place in which we receive either an occupation tax or franchise agreement. Alan Thielen with the Omaha City Attorney's Office agreed. We feel that it gives special preferred status to builders of towers and infrastructure as opposed to telecommunication companies themselves, he told lawmakers. We believe that this goes beyond federal law. It appears to give a blank check to private companies to build an unlimited number of poles and towers in the right-of-way. We're afraid that we could see a forest of poles and towers in our towns and cities. It takes away a responsible management of rights of way. In addition, testifiers said LB 389 would create regulatory confusion since the Federal Communications Commission is considering issuing mandates for small cell technology. Illustrating the major concerns from this bill, 11 amendments are pending for when the bill goes before the full legislature. Lawmakers should try to strike a proper balance that serves both rural and urban needs. If they can't, they need to kill the bill and start fresh next session with a more workable approach.
Well, moving on to today's living and entertainment. Ask the doctors. Common adenovirus has many subtypes. Dear doctor, I've been hearing about adenovirus, which is often mistaken as the flu. How can you tell the difference, and is it as serious as the flu? Dear reader, your question is a great reminder, especially during flu season, of how complex and ubiquitous viruses are, because a host of illnesses, with the common cold alone blamed on more than 200 identified subtypes of virus, and many more that are still unidentified. One main group of viruses is adenovirus. Adenovirus got its name because it was first isolated in the adenoids, although this isn't the only place it's found. More than 60 types of adenovirus exist, with some causing much different symptoms than the others. Serotypes 3, 5, 7, 14, and 21, for example, have been associated with more severe disease. Adenoviruses most commonly cause upper respiratory symptoms. These include inflammation of the throat, leading to a sore throat, and swelling of the membranes in the nose, leading to runny nose and nasal congestion. Such symptoms are often accompanied by headache, fever, fatigue, muscle pain, and stomach pain. But adenovirus can also lead to conjunctivitis, laryngitis, bronchitis, and even pneumonia. Adenovirus-caused pneumonia more often affects those younger than 5 years old, accounting for 15% of pneumonias in this age group. Young children can also be affected by subtypes of adenovirus that lead to diarrhea, which can last up to 8 to 12 days. In rare cases, the virus can affect the brain, causing meningitis or encephalitis, or lead to inflammation of the liver and the heart muscle. In people with a compromised immune system or those who have had an organ transplant, adenovirus can lead to more serious disease and possible death. Adenovirus is a resilient virus that can survive for long periods on environmental surfaces. And though bleach, formaldehyde, and heat can inactivate it, the virus is resistant to many disinfectants. It can be transmitted through respiratory droplets, spread by sneezing, coughing, or contact with secretions. Adenovirus is also shed in the stool for many weeks after an acute infection. Without proper hand washing by all parties, the virus can then be taken in orally by another individual. Because adenovirus is easily transmissible, it's associated with outbreaks of infection in daycare settings and among military recruits. In fact, military recruits are now vaccinated against adenovirus, which has decreased the rate of infection. Adenovirus is diagnosed by either viral culture or by tests producing more rapid results. The treatment is similar to those for other cold viruses: fluid intake, rest, acetaminophen or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, aspirin and ibuprofen for headache, and medications for diarrhea. For people who are taking drugs to suppress the immune system, the antiviral medication Cidofovir can improve survival. Yes, many of the symptoms are similar to influenza, especially in young children. Fever in those under 5 with adenovirus averages 102.6 degrees. This is similar to influenza. However, influenza is a much deadlier virus, especially among older individuals, causing thousands of deaths per year. Although adenovirus can cause significant illness, it doesn't usually lead to the intensity of sickness and the death rate seen with flu. Rapid flu tests can help distinguish whether a specific illness is due to influenza or another virus, such as adenovirus. But the point remains, if a person becomes dehydrated or if his or her mental state changes, seek emergency help. Neither illness should be taken lightly. I'm afraid to leave the room after I read these. Beverly?
Well, let's see what Amy has to say. It won't be about that, but here's her advice today. Dear Amy, what are my obligations to my sister who left the country and moved to Israel? My wife and I returned to our hometown after college, specifically because we wanted to be close to our families and parents. We wanted our kids to have grandparents and cousins nearby and to gather with extended family and my sister when they come to visit. Whenever my expat sister and her kids visit each year, we spend a lot of time with them. I really love my sister and her children. Recently, she has been giving me the biggest guilt trip about not attending my nephew's bar mitzvah in Israel, almost 6,000 miles away. She feels hurt that she is low priority on my list. Honestly, I was planning on going, but my pregnant wife is so sick and I feel guilty leaving her alone to care for our other young child. Is the person who moved away allowed to make the left behind feel guilty for not spending thousands of dollars in several days on a plane? I have been to visit Israel several times, but I feel that she is out of line with the guilt. She is the one who chose to live abroad. I've never made her feel guilty, but I don't think it's fair to say I'm not choosing family when I specifically live where I do because I chose family. Is it fair for my sister to make me feel guilty for not coming to a religious ceremony thousands of miles away? I'm not religious. What is my obligation? How do I navigate this without making her feel bad so that I don't feel bad either? Signed, Anonymous Uncle. Dear Anonymous, you don't get to ask if someone is allowed to make you feel guilty. Guilt is a two-way transaction. Do not diminish the importance of a bar mitzvah in a family's story. Whether or not you are religious, they are, and this is huge. You seem unwilling to feel bad for having to miss this. But aren't you sorry that you won't be able to witness this important passage in your nephew's life? Dude, go ahead and feel bad. It might help the dynamic with your sister if you basically cop to feeling very sorry about this, but given your own family situation, you've decided it isn't wise for you to go. This will be your final answer. So any reaction she has is just the guilt balloon caroming around the room as it runs out of air. Write a very warm and avuncular letter to your nephew, offering him a special experience the next time he is able to come to the States. Send a generous gift and express genuine interest in seeing photographs from the celebration. Dear Amy, my boyfriend and I have been in a relationship for 3 years. His wife died 6 years ago, and I've been divorced for a long time. We feel very lucky to have love back in our lives after suffering through very painful losses. His adult children will not allow me to come to any of their kids' birthdays, school events, or family activities. They feel that if I am there, they are being disloyal to their late mother. This has caused us much pain and stress. We've respected their wishes, but we feel that by now things need to change. We feel so guilty that our happiness is causing pain for them. What should we do? Signed, Left Out. Dear Left Out, it's time to start showing up. You should accompany your guy to school events, concerts, and games, or other essentially public events. Greet everyone warmly, but otherwise keep a discreet and calm distance. Basically, you will need to demonstrate your presence and the fact that you are not going away. You cannot force these people to invite you to their home, but your guy should gently encourage them to accept you. And finally, here's the last letter to Amy. Dear Amy, after 30 years of ministry and caring for couples, my response would have been much shorter than yours to over it. My response, get out. The response to abusive relationships ought to be simple. The abused needs to leave. There are plenty of loving women in the world for over it. He doesn't need to change her behavior because he can't. The logic of counseling this early into a relationship before marriage is a huge indicator that this match was made in hell, not heaven. Signed, Father K. Dear Father K, thank you for your insight.
Short but sweet answer. There's a new column, Ask the Food Doc. Can I consume unopened mustard from 2015? Dear Food Doc, I have a jar of French's mustard dated 2015 and it's not been opened. I assume mustard generally cannot really get old. Is it still safe? In any case, we used it last night and we all seem to be healthy today. And while we're on the subject of dated food products, can you please tell me if it's okay to use a Betty Crocker cake mix from November 2016? Dear reader, these are among the most common questions I receive. Evidently, there are a lot of kitchen cupboards full of out-of-date products. Attaching shelf life dates on food labels was intended to be helpful and informative. Unfortunately, they remain a source of considerable confusion for consumers. Researchers who study consumer behavior have even come up with a new term to describe this sort of ambiguous information: unclarity confusion. If you stick with me, I will do my best to deconstruct these products and provide some much needed clarity. First, let's distinguish between the three main types of date levels: sell by, use by, and best by. Each of these means something different, also with the exception of infant formula, all are voluntary. The sell by labels are usually used for bread, dairy, eggs, and other perishable foods. In theory, these dates tell retailers how long they should keep products on the shelf. In reality, however, the sell-by dates are arbitrary and often have little to do with safety or quality. Thus, many perfectly wholesome foods are removed simply because they're a bit beyond the sell-by date. That's one reason why most sell-by dates have given way to use-by or best-by labels. The use-by dates refer to when the consumer should eat or drink the product. They are also found on perishable foods like refrigerated meats, prepared deli foods, and ready-to-eat bagged salads. Perhaps the most common but nonetheless confusing labels are the best by dates. Let's take your 2015 mustard vintage as an example. The leading brand has a best by date of about 2 years, and it will actually be perfectly fine for even longer. Ingredients on food labels are listed in order of least to most, or most to least abundant. For mustard, vinegar is the first ingredient listed. Vinegar is one of the most effective natural antimicrobial agents on the planet. Salt, the third ingredient, also preserves the product. Mustard seeds also contain their own natural preservatives. Finally, processed mustard is heated before it's packaged. If you do the math, the sum of acidity plus salt plus natural preservatives plus heat equals excellent food preservation. Now let's consider your Betty Crocker cake mix. It is also well preserved, but for different reasons. Well, one reason really. That's because cake mixes contain only dry ingredients. No water means microbes cannot grow. Of course, this assumes the cake mix package had not been exposed to air or humidity. So why do manufacturers stamp best if by, used by dates for these and so many other non-perishable products? The answer is that these dates are based on the manufacturer's estimation on when product or nutritional quality will begin to deteriorate. The mustard, for example, may lose some of the pungent flavor or the bright yellow color may fade a bit. The cake mix could develop a stale flavor or texture. In neither product is food safety an issue. Admittedly, the use-by dates are generally very conservative. Any potential loss in quality would probably not even be noticed by most consumers. Still, it is human nature to see the dating whether the product is spoiled or unsafe. Unfortunately, this means billions of pounds of perfectly good food gets tossed. Total food losses, edible foods we throw away, cost the average family more than $2,000 per year. So what will happen if you consume a non-perishable product past the use-by date? Assuming it smells and looks okay, absolutely nothing. I know as I was in the fraternity, we used to eat pizza that was 3 days old.
And you're still here.
Well,
You're
still
here
here.
to talk about it. I was going to say
50
that
years later.
I think maybe we ought that based on the mustard characteristics, maybe we ought all eat mustard every day. 70 years ago, Wednesday, Omaha's Children's Hospital admitted its very first patient. At 6.5-month-old John Paul Matson of Dundee was treated for a hernia problem. The World Herald followed along, taking notes and pictures like a concerned but proud parent. The newspaper had good reasons. In many ways, the hospital owed its existence to the World Herald. Omaha is going to have a children's hospital, declared the front page of the newspaper on December 2nd, 1943. It was a statement of intent as much as fact. No bricks had been laid, no plans had been drawn up, but the newspaper's leaders had decided it was time for such a hospital. The World Herald also announced that the first $115,000 toward building the facility would come from the newspaper's owners. The money, worth about $1.5 million today, kickstarted a years-long campaign by the newspaper to build, equip, and fund a hospital solely for children. The front page news in 1943 was the first time that most readers had heard of the idea. but the plan had been simmering for a while in publisher Henry Dorley, since Dorley's wife became ill in 1942. When Margaret Dorley was discharged from the hospital that year, she stopped to pay her bill. There she waited behind a pair of anguished parents who were unable to come up with the $10 deposit required before doctors would see their child, according to former World Herald editor Hollis Limprecht. The parents were about to turn away and leave when Margaret Dorley offered to pay the $10 for them. Mrs. Dorley was furious, Limprecht wrote in A Chance to Live, a historic history of Children's Hospital. She went home throwing sparks and told her husband that something needed to be done for Omaha children in need of health care. A year later, Henry Dorley connected with Dr. C.W.M. Pointer, the dean of the University of Nebraska's medical school. Pointer had long harbored his own dream of starting a children's hospital in Omaha. Together, the two quickly started contacting movers and shakers in Omaha. On December 1st, 1943, a who's who of Omaha society met as the Board of Trustees of Children's Memorial Hospital at the Fontenelle Hotel. And in the next day's paper, all of Omaha learned of the plan. Thousands of individuals and groups gave to the project, according to reports from the time. A group of trick-or-treaters gave $14.10. A Central High School alumni basketball game donated $60. A backyard kids show brought in $6.01. A basement magic show netted $17.65. Most gifts were under $10, but the number of givers would eventually reach around 30,000 people at a time when Omaha's population was around 250,000. The World Herald reported the names of all givers and regularly ran articles urging Omahans to give. Thanksgiving Day of 1947 will be a happier holiday for those who contribute to the Children's Memorial Hospital, began one entreaty in the paper in November 1947. The final cost of the hospital's construction was about $850,000, paid off entirely by Omahans. Omahans also gave of their time. When the furniture for the new hospital was shipped in by rail, an appeal was made in the paper for help unpacking it and moving it to the building to save on delivery costs. The city's dairy drivers and medical students responded in force, among other volunteers. The involvement meant that much of Omaha felt connected to the facility, originally at 42nd Street and Dewey Avenue. When the hospital had its open house on February 15, 1948, 20,000 people showed up and waited in a line 3 blocks long. A month later, it opened its doors as a hospital. Matson said his parents later told him he beat the hospital's second patient in by about 15 minutes. Matson frequently returned children over the years for hospital anniversaries, as well as a few other stays. On the hospital's 11th birthday, he told the World Herald, "To tell you the truth, although I have never admitted it to my parents, I don't remember much about my first trip to Children's, but if it were anything like my other 3, it must have been a peach." Matson is now retired and living in Illinois, but the Westside High grad said last week that he still feels a strong connection with his hometown. "I'm always proud to be a former resident of Omaha," he said, "and Children's has a special place in my heart." The hospital had more than 620,000 visits in 2017. It is in the middle of an expansion at its 82nd and Dodge campus that Children's CEO Dr. Richard Azikin initiated shortly after arriving in late 2015. He's planning on expanding services and research capabilities. And by 2021, Azikin said, "We'll have literally doubled the physical capacity of the facility, as well as staff and physicians." Decades ago, the hospital's mission was simple: to give every child a better chance to live. Today, as Azikin said, the hospital staff has a more holistic mission: to improve the life of every child.
Rice porridge is a blank slate for soul-satisfying flavors. Congee is a humble dish, a way to cope when rice stores were low. Stretch the grain by adding too much water, cook into a hearty porridge, and throw in bits and pieces of whatever leftovers are on hand. These simple dishes, born of necessity, often become our most soul-satisfying. Think chicken noodle soup. When Joanne Chang was a child, her mother made her congee whenever she was ill. For me, it's comfort food. It's what made me feel good, said Chang, now chef and co-owner of the Boston restaurant Myers and Chang, adding that her mother would sit there and feed it to me, and I felt loved, and it was delicious. Congee is the stuff of home, and like the best recipes for home cooks, it rewards improvisation. Think of congee as a blank slate. Start with a ratio of 8 cups of water to 1 cup of short grain rice. In her 2003 cookbook, Essentials of Asian Cuisine, Corinne Trang counsels against rinsing the rice before cooking to retain the starch that will be essential to creating a soft, velvety texture. Bring the rice and water to a boil and reduce the heat to maintain a steady simmer, stirring occasionally to prevent sticking until the grains bloom and begin to shred. Or if you're an Instant Pot fanatic, dump the water and rice into your cooker, select the 20-minute porridge setting, and allow it to vent naturally. What you add next depends entirely on your mood and your proximity to a good Chinese market. Chopped pork, diced thousand-year-old egg are perhaps most popular. Trang suggests hard-boiling salted duck egg and serving that as a garnish, along with thousand-year egg and sliced omelet. Chang's mother pan-fried canned tuna fish packed in oil. It was salty and had a lot of umami, and it gets a little crunchy crispy. Drizzle a bit of good soy sauce and sesame oil and add the crunch of fresh green onion, and you've got a belly-warming breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Congee is an excellent foil for the concentrated flavor of dried seafood, too. Consider an adapted version of Maggie Zhu's from her Omnivore's cookbook. Or you could get more ambitious and try a recipe Chang invented for her restaurant. She was aiming for a dim sum dish that made good use of her Nirvana chicken recipe, soy braised thighs that are easy to replicate at home. We suggest you make a big batch of the chicken on Sunday along with the crispy shallots. Save the congee for a weeknight when humble food is all you can manage. Yep.
We're going to move now to our business and market stories for today. From the World Herald, the talk of a trade war in the news lately is worrisome, not only because it could drive up prices for steel and aluminum, or because other countries might retaliate with new tariffs on U.S. agricultural imports. 2 reasons farmers are concerned. But there's also a broader issue, the University of Nebraska's Lincoln diplomat in residence told an audience Tuesday. President Donald Trump's use of national security as a reason for new tariffs on imported steel and aluminum tests the use of that reasoning and opens the door for other countries to do the same, said Darcy Better, former chief agricultural negotiator for the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Other countries may emulate what we do, testing the very systems international trade relies on, Better said. Better's panel conversation with the Canadian ambassador to the U.S. was part of an inaugural symposium for the Clayton K. Yider Institute of International Trade and Finance. Yider in Nebraska, who served as U.S. Secretary of Agriculture and U.S. Trade Representative, died in March 2017 at age 86. Clayton Yider was disappointed during the 2016 presidential campaign to see candidates oppose the free trade deals he'd worked for, said Christy Yider, his widow, who attended the event Tuesday. But the current debate over trade makes the Institute's mission to train students in global trade and finance even more urgent, she said. The afternoon brought business and agricultural leaders from around Nebraska to listen. Cindy Allen, a dry bean farmer from Ogallala, said she is optimistic that agriculture will emerge unscathed from the current talks to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement. If it doesn't, she is concerned that other countries will go elsewhere for products currently imported from the United States. They have to feed their people, she said. It's become clear in the current debate that global trade has local consequences, said a speaker from Smithfield Foods, which has a pork processing plant in Crete. Senior Vice President Kira Lombardo said the company is worried about retaliatory tariffs. U.S. farmers raise more pork than Americans eat, meaning that while trade supports rural communities in states like Nebraska, that dependency makes us vulnerable to challenges like changing governments and changing trade, she said.
Bulu Incorporated getting bigger. Company buys warehouse, adds 45 employees. A Lincoln Tech company has announced a big expansion. Bulu Inc., which is known for its Bulu Box subscription programs and also builds private label subscription programs for clients, has opened a second warehouse location. The company has taken over a former Nebraska Book Company warehouse near 14th Street and Pioneers Boulevard and added 45 employees, bringing its total workforce to about 125 people. Bulu said in a news release that the new warehouse, which is its second in Lincoln, was needed to accommodate booming growth in its private label subscription box business. Founded in 2012 by Lincolnites Paul and Stephanie Jarrett, Bulu started out with its own product offering sample boxes of nutritional supplements. It branched out in 2016 to work with major retail brands to help them build their own subscription box programs. Bulu recently moved its corporate offices from 13th and P Streets to Fuse co-working at 8th and P. The company said in a news release that it is up to nearly a dozen active private label clients and recently added athletic wear maker Lululemon as a client. Brad?
We're going to move now to our sports stories from our respective papers. This one actually is kind of a good segue from the business end of our news because it talks about how local businesses are going to be affected by the Sweet 16. They're scheduling extra waiters and getting blocks of rooms ready for an influx of people. Omaha bars, restaurants, and hotels are counting on big traffic from basketball fans celebrating a win or drowning a loss when the NCAA men's basketball Midwest regional semifinals and finals come to the CenturyLink on March 23rd and 25th. Omaha's hospitality industry has had almost 4 years to prepare. The city was selected in late 2014 as one of 4 cities to host 2018 regional games in big company along with Atlanta, Los Angeles, and Boston. The brackets came out Sunday, and despite dollars flying around in office pools, no one knows yet which teams will win early rounds and advance. But Omaha will be ready for Duke, Auburn, Kansas, Michigan State, or whichever 4 schools make it to Omaha for the Sweet 16 round. Establishments said they're used to staffing up for big events like the College World Series, the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting, and the U.S. Olympic swim trials. How much of a benefit Omaha might see from the games may depend on which teams end up in the tournament, said Keith Baxson, executive director of Visit Omaha. Fans of the University of Kansas, for example, may be more willing to travel, but are also close enough that they might not stay for the whole weekend, Baxson said. The Sweet 16 does have more prestige than the first and second round games Omaha has hosted in the past, Baxson said. That doesn't necessarily mean it will bring more people to town. Your numbers automatically drop in terms of teams that are playing, but you elevate in stature because now you've got 4 of the best teams so far in the bracket, Baxson said. So far in the tournament, Baxson said. Omaha boosters love the national attention that comes from events that are mentioned in news reports and on social media. Exposure that costs Omaha nothing in terms of advertising and often is more effective than a tourism campaign. Todd Murphy, CEO of Universal Information Services, a company that keeps track of media mentions, said the upcoming tournament already has increased Omaha's prominence in media of all sorts. In the past 30 days, 829 articles have used Omaha along with the word March Madness, NCAA basketball tournament, or college basketball tournament, reaching 633 million viewers and readers. Omaha had also been paired with the word Sweet 16 or Elite 8 in 92 articles, reaching 178 million people, Murphy said.
In Nebraska basketball, Williams points to quality wins. The Nebraska women's basketball team had a few chances, but never got the really big win this season like the one against Maryland would have been. Nebraska's only ranked wins were against then number 20 Iowa and number 25 Rutgers, but Nebraska did really well against the teams that ended up ranked 20 through 70 in the RPI, and that helped the Huskers earn an at-large bid into the NCAA tournament. The Huskers earned a number 10 seed and will play 7th seeded Arizona State in the first round Saturday in Austin, Texas. Nebraska was really consistent in the second half of the season and took advantage when given the opportunity to get good road wins. The Huskers have 8 wins against top 70 RPI teams and win 9-2 in road games. Nebraska, 21-10, had 5 wins against teams that made the NCAA tournament, 2 wins against Iowa and single victories against Minnesota, Michigan, and Drake. 6 of the Husker losses were against teams in the NCAA tournament. Coach Amy Williams thinks the Huskers' wins against good opponents were a deciding factor for getting in. What people would technically consider on the men's side, maybe quad 1 wins, the fact that we had 13 games against those type of opponents, 7 quality wins like that, I think is probably ultimately what helped us, Williams said. And we really feel like probably that win in the Big Ten tournament over Michigan was probably some icing on the cake. Deb?
From Manhattan, Kansas, juniors Michael Imodi and Ryan Mantle and sophomore William Robertson homered to lead Creighton to a 13-3 road victory against Kansas State on Tuesday night. Robertson got the Blue Jays, who were standing at 9-5, off to a good start, doubling down the left field line in the first inning to bring home Clark Brinkman, who had led off by reaching on the first of 4 Wildcat errors. Robertson then scored when Thomas Lovano reached on another error. After Kansas State, were stand at 10-6, tied the game at 2-2 in the third, Imodi hit a 3-run homer in the 4th inning to give CU a 5-2 lead. Mantle added his solo shot an inning later. In the 6th, Imodi drove in Brinkman with a single before Robertson's 2-run homer. Creighton then scored 4 runs with 2 outs in the 7th to put the Wildcats away. After Jordan Hovey scored on a KSU error, Robertson delivered a 2-run single followed by an RBI double by Lovano. Evan John got the win for the Jays, pitching a perfect inning in relief of starter Preston Church, who gave up 2 runs on 5 hits and 3 walks in 2 2/3 innings. Johnson and 5 other Creighton relievers combined to go 6 1/3 innings, allowing 3 hits and 1 walk. Quentin Potter took the loss for the Wildcats, giving up 4 runs, 2 earned, on 5 hits and 3 walks. The Blue Jays, who bounced back from a loss to Minnesota on Sunday, opened their home schedule this weekend with a series against Wichita State. The first game is slated for 6:30 p.m. Friday at TD Ameritrade Park. And my apologies to all of those names that I absolutely ruined when I read that. They know who they are.
Yes, they do. In Husker football, NU prepares to tackle learning curve. Defense eager to get familiar with new coach's system. Ever since Scott Frost was hired as Nebraska's head coach on December 2nd, Husker fans have waited excitedly for the team to hit the field under his leadership. It would be hard to blame the fan base for collectively daydreaming about that high-powered offense and a defensive system run by Eric Chinander that produced 32 turnovers last year at Central Florida. Let's focus on that side of the ball for the moment. Chinander has outlined his core philosophy as being centered on aggressiveness and on putting his athletes in position to change games. As he told the Journal Star last month, we've got to create an environment where the players can be successful and then get out of the way to some degree. The highlight reel plays, for now, feel like a long way off. More than 5 months from Nebraska's season opener against Akron, the task is less like wreaking havoc and more like learning a foreign language. Even a playbook designed to free athletes from overthinking has a page 1. Sophomore defensive lineman Ben Still said he can already see how the system will eventually be fun to play in, but the current task at hand is a slog. From just how he's explained it to us, you definitely get that sense that it will come naturally. But right now, it's overwhelming a little bit, he said. It's not a new feeling for Still and the Huskers, though, who are on their 3rd defensive coordinator in as many seasons. 5th-year seniors like Mick Stoltenberg are on their 4th defensive systems, having learned from John Papuchis, Mark Banker, Bob Diaco, And now Chinander. Coaches aren't allowed to oversee any type of football-specific drills before spring ball begins Friday, though they can watch on-field conditioning work as long as an actual football is not involved. That puts the onus on players to begin learning the new playbook on their own time and to stop by the coach's office with questions. It can be, and by several coaches' accounts has been, a productive time on the calendar as far as learning goes, but there's no substitute for practice repetitions. What's going to get us to a different level is hard work. And these guys have gone to work, Frost said last week. I hope we have a whole team of guys that aren't satisfied with the record last year. Because the way to fix it is to get in the weight room, get on the field, and get in the classroom and work. I've seen a lot of guys starting to do that. The Huskers have been in the weight room and in the classroom to some degree, and now the on-field part will begin in earnest. At first, it might be a little bumpy. Asked what he wanted to get accomplished in NU's first spring practice, Still said, I think just getting that side of the defense down to the point where you don't have to think so much when you see the call. You don't have to sit there and pause and try to get to the back of your head and your brain somewhere and figure out what you're supposed to do with that call. That's a lot of it, just getting the thinking eliminated out of it so that we can play fast.
From Brookings, South Dakota, around the corner from 2 rooms full of fans who cheer on every post move he makes and 30-foot jumper he takes, Mike Dahm began to reflect upon his time at South Dakota State. Once a little recruited project out of Kimball, Nebraska, a 2-time Summit League Player of the Year, is the known commodity in the college basketball world now. Heck, TBS studio host Ernie Johnson even referred to the Jackrabbit star as the Dominator in the opening minutes of the NCAA selection show. That brought a wry smile to the 6'9" redshirt junior's forward's face. Within the hour, Dom and his SDSU teammates were celebrating the announcement of their 3rd straight berth in the NCAA tournament. The 12th seeded Jackrabbits, with a record of 28-6, will face number 5 seed Ohio State, who stand at 24-8, on Thursday at 3 p.m. in Boise, Idaho. It's definitely crazy, Dom said at SDSU's NAAC watch party Sunday. Since I was a freshman, being able to say I've made the tournament every single year that I've played, 3 straight, is pretty unbelievable. That's something not a lot of people can say. It's been pretty special, this journey, because of everyone who has been around me. They make it really special to me. It's been one hell of a ride. It certainly has. The 4th-year junior enters the tournament in 2nd place on South Dakota State's all-time scoring list with 2,205 points, trailing the record held by Nate Wolters by 158. If Dom plays another collegiate season, he's on track to graduate in May and has garnered some NBA attention. He has a realistic shot to become the 9th player in Division I history to reach 3,000 career points. If he has a plan for what's to come after this season, he isn't sharing it as of yet. I just definitely want to focus on winning the rest of the season and trying to get as many games in as we can before it's all over, he said. I just really want to focus on helping my team win the next game.
In NFL notes, Breeze stays, Cousins will visit the Vikes. Adrian Peterson's short stint in Arizona is over. Jordy Nelson's long and productive stay in Green Bay has ended too. Meanwhile, Drew Brees is staying put in the Big Easy. Case Keenum is headed to the Rocky Mountains, and Kirk Cousins will make his first visit as a free agent to Minnesota. The Vikings long have been considered a natural landing spot for one of the most valuable quarterbacks available. Defensive back Prince Nakamura, a former Husker, has a new 3-year deal with Chicago for $27 million, according to ESPN and other sources. One day before the league's new year begins, veteran running back Peterson was released by the Cardinals on Tuesday. And receiver Nelson, Aaron Rodgers' favorite target, was let go by the Packers. 7-time All-Pro running back Peterson began last season with New Orleans, but after barely playing there, was dealt to the Cardinals. Peterson rushed for 134 yards in a win over Tampa Bay and 159 in a win over San Francisco. In 6 games, he gained 448 yards on 129 carries for Arizona before being sidelined with a neck injury. Peterson, who turns 33 next week, ranks 12th in the NFL in career rushing with 12,200 yards. Nelson had 550 receptions and 69 touchdown catches in 10 seasons in Green Bay. But his production declined last season with Rodgers sidelined much of the year by a collarbone injury. Breeze, 39, has agreed to a 2-year, $50 million extension with New Orleans, with $27 million guaranteed the first year. Two people familiar with the contract told the Associated Press. They spoke on condition of anonymity Tuesday because the agreement has not been announced. Keenum, a backup when the season began, guided Minnesota to the NFC North title and then went into the conference championship game. He'll cash in with the Broncos. Cousins will visit with the Vikings on Wednesday, agent Mike McCartney said. ESPN reported that Cousins will sign with the Vikings, but McCartney said no decision has been made yet by his client. Titans signed Super Bowl hero Butler. Tennessee agreed with New England cornerback and one-time Super Bowl hero Malcolm Butler on a 5-year deal worth more than $60 million. Agent Derek Simpson told the Associated Press that Butler will sign the deal, including $30 million guaranteed once free agency begins. Butler spent the past 4 seasons with the New England Patriots and has 8 career interceptions. He was benched for the Super Bowl in February. Well, it's 12 o'clock and the end of the program. My name is Rick Miner and wishing you a happy week.
And this is Beverly Leidig, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mike Beverly. You have been listening to the Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal Star on Radio
Fabulous
Talking.